Garry Kasparov's opponent grabs a free pawn in the opening but falls behind in development by just one move. Kasparov is able to create a very deadly attack using one powerful concept. What is that concept? How can you apply it in your games? You're gonna learn that. So without wasting any further time, let's get started. So white opens with c4, to which Garry Kasparov plays the move knight f6. Fun fact, both players share the same surname. However, in this game, whenever I say Kasparov, I'm referring to the player with the black pieces, who is none other than Garry Kasparov, the 13th world champion and someone who's widely regarded as the greatest attacking chess player of all time. Knight c3. Kasparov plays c5, taking control of the center. White decides to fianchetto the bishop, whereas black decides it's time to strike in the center with d5. White takes, and puts his queen on b3. Now if you see, white has a queen, a knight, and a bishop, all of them aiming at this d5 pawn. 3 attackers at the d5 pawn. Black has just 2 defenders, 1 and 2. So it looks like this d5 pawn is gonna be lost. However, there is an important opening principle that says you should not develop your queen early. So instead of defending the d5 pawn, Kasparov decides to punish white for developing his queen early. First, he plays the move knight to c6, developing the knight. He loses the pawn on d5. Okay, now white is up a healthy extra pawn, and that to a central pawn. However, from this point on, Kasparov is able to build a massive attack against the white position. He does that using one very powerful concept that is known as initiative. Initiative is when you attack and your opponent has to react to that threat. Whenever there is a sequence of moves where you attack and your opponent has to defend, you attack, you give a threat, your opponent has to defend. The side which is attacking is said to have the initiative. Think of initiative like having ball possession in football. Whichever side has the ball possession is eventually going to win the game or is eventually going to score, right? Unless you are Jose Mourinho's Chelsea, which somehow finds a way to score goals by counter-attacking and parking the bus. But still, when you counter-attack, you also need to have the ball possession. So initiative is pretty much like that, ball possession. So knight d4, attacking the queen. Now, the queen can't run because it would hang the knight. So white takes, black takes, the queen is attacked, and now the queen has to run. Now let's take stock of the position. Black enjoys comfortable development. However, black has lost a pawn for that. Okay, and if you give white just one move, okay, if white is able to play one move here like knight f3, white is completely fine. So if you just develop your pieces with any random move like bishop e7 or bishop d6, white is not going to feel any pressure and white is simply going to continue his development, something like knight f3. Okay, so yes, you want to develop your pieces, but something even better than developing your pieces is to develop your pieces and give a threat at the same time, like Kasparov does in this move, in this position with bishop f5. Now there is a threat to put this knight on c2 and just win the rook with a fork. Once again with bishop f5, Kasparov is giving a threat and forcing white to deal with that threat. Okay, he's keeping the initiative. So bishop f5 was played. White played the move d3, blocking this bishop from looking at c2. But Kasparov once again puts more pressure on the position. He goes c4. Now white has to try to get his pieces out. Okay. However, white doesn't do that. White ignores his development and asks this knight what it is doing here and plays e3. Now, when a piece is attacked like this, most players would think of retreating with it. Okay, like knight c6, knight e6. But Kasparov was different, okay? And if you have seen any of Kasparov's games, you'll discover that his first instinct was actually to counter-attack. And this small difference in thinking helped him find unexpected moves. Moves that even his opponent would not have calculated. Kasparov plays a very crazy move. Instead of saving the knight, his first instinct is to go after the king. So he plays bishop into d3. He sacrifices this knight. But now once again, he plays bishop to b4 check, giving a check to the king. White defends. And like I told you, Kasparov's first instinct is not to save this piece. His first instinct is to see how he can attack the king and how he can find a way to create an attack against the king. So instead of saving the piece, Kasparov plays short castle. Kasparov knows that his initiative and ability to attack this king is far more valuable than the 2 pieces that he has lost. White takes the bishop. This allows Kasparov's rook to come into the game, after which this king is really starting to feel the heat. Okay, now the king cannot run to f2 because that would allow queen f2 check. The king, let's say, goes to c1. Black can simply gobble this g2 bishop. And yes, even though black is down a rook, the problem is for white, first of all, the rook is attacked. This knight is not developed, and if this knight moves to f3, there is now nobody to guard this e2 square. So here comes the rook. There is an invasion here. The game is just lost at this point. So that's why the white king cannot run to d2. That would not work, which means white has to defend with knight e2. That allows Kasparov to take the knight, take, and eventually Kasparov takes the d4 pawn. Now, if you see, white has these 3 pieces, 2 bishops and 1 rook against the single black queen. If white is able to consolidate, okay, if white is able to coordinate his pieces and get his king to safety, white is better because this material can easily overwhelm a queen. But the problem here for white is that his king is stuck in the middle and none of these pieces are coordinated, which allows black to keep his attack going against this white king. White tries to play rook a1, tries to coordinate his forces. Now Kasparov takes this b2 pawn and gives a check. White plays bishop d2, and now tactics are always there in every position. Kasparov is not going to miss out on simple tactics. He plays c3. This bishop is pinned, and voila, he just wins the bishop easily. c3, king drops to f1. Kasparov takes the bishop on d2. And seeing that white is down a lot of material and the fact that black's queen is still very active, white resigned in the game and Kasparov won a very nice game. Not all your opponents will ignore their development and hand you the initiative. Most of them will finish their development, get their king to safety and want to play an equal game against you. So how do you take initiative against your opponents in the middle game? Here's a Kasparov game that you can check out.